Really nice to be here. Wonderful country. First time in Latvia. I do quite a bit of traveling, and it's a wonderful country. Wonderful history, rich food, and I can't believe how many languages you speak and how easy you speak English. I was amazed that the president of your country addressed you in English. It's really amazing. Do you know what they call in English somebody that can speak 3 languages? In English, you call this trilingual, right? You can speak 3 languages. And somebody that can speak 2 languages, what do you call? They call it bilingual, right? Do you know what they call in English somebody that can speak only a single language? Call it American. I'm American. So we're going to go today through a journey, a visit on, this is the wrong presentation for today. This is for tomorrow. There's 2 presentations. So if you saw, we'll get this going here for a second. We're going to go through a discussion on what we call the immutable laws of 2019. Actually, it's, to be honest with you, it's going to be something that's going to be around for quite some time. Let's see if we can get this presentation up and running. If you can't tell, you're going to have a second presentation with me tomorrow. So if that's an interesting presentation, that's what I'll be delivering tomorrow. If you want, I can deliver that presentation now. So this presentation that you're going to be reviewing is a presentation about, let's call them laws or rules or structure. And I gave this first to a community of folks out in San Francisco, largely in a DevOps environment, DevSecOps environment. People love the idea of what is becoming standard practice in an environment and to enrich themselves on how to be thinking about things going forward. So we're going to make a little journey as soon as the presentation comes up about that. Why do they love these rules? If you have kids, you know that they love structure for one of 3 reasons. Either they're going to follow it because they're that kind of people. They want to know when they're breaking the law because they like to do that too, sometimes, some of the people. And then there are a few people that they run right towards the end of the structure and go right past it, and they want to know when they're actually never going to be part of the rules again. Any luck? You go. So let me go through this because I think I know the presentation very well. I don't know if you realize this or not, but if you review the last 2 years worth of data breaches, hacks, and different techniques of security vulnerabilities, they have been almost entirely, largely based upon the cloud, the public cloud. You know, I can remember when public cloud first came about, people would talk about, I don't know if it's safe enough. Today, and I'm not trying to say that I don't like the public cloud, because I very much do, and I'm not suggesting at all the public cloud is not someplace you're supposed to be, but I can tell you, it is very insecure. We can tell that if you actually are looking at the news, not about the specific vulnerabilities, but where it's coming from, you will see that it's public cloud. The Jenkins server with Tesla being crypto mined on top of Amazon. How about data breaches? Whether it be defense contractors, whether it be social media groups and so forth, public cloud infrastructure, S3 buckets on Amazon being open. What about this idea of actually ransomware? Can ransomware actually be distributed from the public cloud infrastructure? You bet, 100%. How about going out of business for those companies that are cloud native? Because their entire environment was either violated or disappeared on a hack. Gone. As quick as they started, gone overnight. I love this Code Spaces. I know it's a few years old now. Company was hacked. Literally went out of business because their entire environment was not recreatable from a hack. Pretty amazing. How about DDoS? We always talk about DDoS being something that's actually coming on over the internet to you. Could it be actually born on the cloud? You bet. Cloud is perfect for it. It's 100% elastic. It's easy. It's scalable. And it's very hard to block. When was the last time you tried to block Amazon as a source code, right? And bots. I'm going to talk a lot about bots. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. The theme for today is the following. You know, it's very rare that you get a lot of people to agree on a topic, but there's one topic that Vladimir Putin, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, and Stephen Hawking, the late Stephen Hawking, all agree that the next major human conflict will be fought not over physical resources, financial resources, but over artificial intelligence. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time diving into that, but I can tell you that artificial intelligence means cloud and automation, as well as algorithms and speed of the algorithms, the quality of the algorithms. These are the 10 major rules of your life as you move forward in the next 18 months. Now, honestly, this is cutting-edge stuff. So depending on where you are in your journey of application development, in your journey of actually edge compute and cloud integration, means that you're going to be at a different stage on this. But as you move towards edge compute, IoT, microservices, application development, micro-mesh environments, and integration of 5G, you'll be head deep into these issues. I'm not going to go through each one of these individually. I can. I'll be around, as you know. I look forward to talking to you about it, but I'm going to give you the themes. One of the biggest themes is the migration to the cloud. And I'm not talking private cloud. Honestly, private cloud is going, I don't say away, is becoming less desirable as it once was. And it's clear public cloud is becoming the major benefactor of that. We can talk about why all day long, but it's clear. The economics are clear, and you can see the growth of the public cloud. But there's a migraine. We already went through some of these issues and some of these stories. What are the migraines? The migraines are the following. Whether or not you realize it or not, the nature of security changes dramatically on the cloud. And one of the things that I said was a fact was that host-based security goes away as a relevant model, right? Most people think about the cloud as being operated on somebody else's computer. That's the definition of their cloud. It's not true. It's operating on everybody else's computer. There's dependencies in the future of your infrastructure on just about everybody's infrastructure. So I would say, depending on where you are in your journey, the model has changed about how you do security. Also, it's about the way you do operations and the way that you actually make investments in your environment. In that model change, there's something fundamentally going on that if you're not watching it, it bites you. You move from a monolithic application, where everything was on a server, on an application. You have libraries that are associated with that application. You know where everything on that application is. And that will have a long tail to it, there's no doubt. I'm not saying it's going away. Then you went to service-based architecture. You talked about, you heard that 5G is fundamentally based upon this. By the way, 5G's promise is that the applications are running on top of 5G is this. 5G and service mesh is a wetted environment. It's the only way you can get to 10 milliseconds on performance is to have an edge compute built upon the 5G, right? If you're not familiar with this, or this is not your father's security infrastructure. It means that you don't often know or own the services that your application are doing. In fact, your models change so dramatically that you actually don't own the infrastructure security. In fact, if you're familiar with public cloud, there is this idea of a shared security responsibility, first born from Amazon, and is now endemic to the entire environment. That you own actually fewer things in your environment for public cloud. As you move forward on cloud-based services like Lambda, serverless, like function as a service, like containers as a service, these things become less complicated, but not any easier. What do we mean by not any easier? I'm moving fast through this because I know I'm long on time already. Here's the problem. Your number one problem in the cloud isn't what you normally think. All those problems that I showed you earlier were some form or factor of something that I consider boring, but I know is very important, and has become yet even more important. Permissions. Permissions, or promiscuous permissions, is the problem in the cloud. We can discuss how and why, but the elevation of permissions, the escalation of privileges, the ability for you to gain access, all starts first and foremost in the cloud based upon permissions. We can go through the Capital One breach, we can go through the Equifax breaches and so forth. Permissions. All right, because I'm short on time, I'm going to go through the cloud native application. If you're not familiar with this, you can get with me. I'm sure for those of you that are familiar, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Cloud native applications are those applications that were not born monolithic. They were not born with the idea that everything was going to be in a single infrastructure. They're born with the idea that you use the native services and capabilities of the cloud for scalability and elasticity. They're born in the cloud. How are they born in the cloud? They're born first and foremost by breaking your application into services. Those services then can be used by many other applications. For example, if you have an authentication service, why should I have my application constantly have a separate application part that deals with authentication? I just have a microservice that deals with authentication. If I have lookups, if I have search functions and so forth, I don't need that to be part of my application. I just have a service that sits out here that calls that ability to do a lookup, that ability to do an authentication, that ability to be able to be a microservice. Moreover, I don't even need to have it to be in the same language. If I got somebody that's very good at Java, very good at whatever, COBOL, I can have it sit here, run its own code, and run a service for me at large. In fact, I don't even need to have written it. I don't even need to own it. We'll talk about that here in a second. The way things work in the cloud today is that you come to the cloud on your application through north-south traffic. You hit a gateway. That gateway is looking for you to actually address a service. And the way it does that is by looking a lookup on a service registry. And if you're not familiar with this infrastructure, this is the breaking up of monolithic and moving it into microservice-based applications. In this infrastructure, the microservice architecture, normally encryption stops here, and this is all open in a normal microservice architecture. As we start putting security on this, this is what it looks like. We start to actually put encryption at the core, and we start to actually make that service registry connected to what is normally today the standard, Kubernetes. If you're not familiar, K8S means Kubernetes. Kubernetes has become the open source standard for most container-based applications. If you're not familiar, Kubernetes is owned by anybody know who owns this open source project? Google, right? It's owned by Google. 90% adoption rate. When you go to service mesh, it solves a lot of problems that the microservices environment has. Microservices has problems with east-west traffic that's unencrypted. It has problems with inspection of application security within the microservice itself, within the container. It has problems being able to have DDoS and many other bot management problems solved because of the registry problem here. There's latency problems and so forth. Typically, you go from microservices to a service mesh environment. What does service mesh mean? It means that you get an environment that actually has end-to-end encryption all the way down to the microservice. And you have a management and control plane that's handling all of these functions through a central control in a much more expedited way. But you also gain a lot of security as a result. This is the future, and this is kind of what it looks like, that you will have, and this is, I say what you will have, this is what is being built today, is this notion of you're defactoring your security so that you have one control plane and you have very little agents or reviewers or detectors that are within the microservices environment today. Remember, all of this largely is cloud-based. All right, so what does that mean, everything's broken? Today, if you have a WAF, an IPS, a next generation malware product and so forth, generally it's all packaged together, that it has policy, detection, analytics, logging, mitigation. Everything is within that control box software plane today with the assumption of northwest-south traffic in your environment. In the cloud, you will not have northwest traffic, and everything will be encrypted. So you have to be able to get all the way down to the microservice level. And to give you an idea how much microservices is here today, name one social media program, one app on your phone that's not microservices based. Everything is microservice and meshed today. This is what it looks like today. This is where things are going. All right, so that's your future security problem. I can tell you, not a lot of security on top of that today. There's not a lot of vendors, not a lot of capability, not a lot of technology. I know this, I do a lot of M&A work. I look at just about everybody that's innovated. Very, very open today. Automated threats. I mentioned AI. AI and bots are related. They're like red-headed stepchildren. Bots are a program that runs automated, right? AI is normally the logic that runs, or some form of AI, machine learning and so forth that runs the bots. We can go through the bots, but there's wonderful, wonderful bots. If you're not familiar with MageCard attack, built on top of the cloud, where it infected e-commerce sites to be able to get into your browsers and actually find that saving of your credit card numbers in your browsers and be able to skim your browsers for your credit card attacks at the client level. This includes handhelds as well as desktops and so forth, right? Wonderful hack, botted, completely automated process, right? So let's talk about bots. Here's the problem with bots. It's 50% or more of the internet traffic today. So if you can't today, right now, discern a good bot from a bad bot in your environment, you got a big problem. Because more than 50% of your traffic likely, and for many environments it's much more, is bots. Bots can be both good and are good and can be bad. It used to be that the problem was this, that this was good, generally, and all of this was bad. Today it's not true. 50% of the traffic in the internet is bots, and 50% of those bots are good. And 4 out of 5 people can't tell the difference between a good or a bad bot. What are some of the most common bad bot attacks? These are them. I'll go through these if you want later on, but these are the most common. I can tell you that when you experience these things, they're super bad. They really are bad. I'll talk about that more. If you don't believe me, and you shouldn't, believe OWASP, right, the Open Web Application Security Project, that's been made very famous on their top 10 web application security threats. And they just came out with, or I should say on this project, they came out with a few years ago on the bots, what are the top threats, and they have the OWASP top 21 automated threats, and this is what they say are the biggest problems on the automation threats. If you're not familiar with it, it's so easy to get your own bot. Here's a great example. It's the AIO bot, all in one. So this is an example of people that like sneakers. I don't know if you really like sneakers. It's not my gig, but a lot of people really like sneakers and like to get them as quick as possible. It turns out that if you try to get a brand new sneaker that's desirable by clicking on the website, it's impossible. The only way to acquire a new sneaker that comes out is by buying a bot. So they literally have a service to give you the ability to buy your brand new sneakers and then resell them for you, right? And it costs you more and more money to be able to get those services. It's not for just sneakers, by the way. It's for anything. Tennis tickets, and so forth, right? This is the way bots work. In addition, if you're not familiar, bots beat CAPTCHA. Did you know that? CAPTCHA is designed for what? To discern whether or not you're a human or a bot, right? Bots, 99% of the time, beat CAPTCHA. So why do we still use CAPTCHA if bots can beat CAPTCHA? Anybody know the answer to this? AI. What, say again? AI, teaching. It's teaching AI. That's exactly right. You're my star student. So how does it work? If you're not familiar, when you go to Google, almost all CAPTCHA is Google. Google presents you with a picture. You guys are familiar with this? The picture is normally something like a sign or driving or cat walking across the street or a storefront. It's something driving, right? By the way, Google is very, very powerful about this. They tell you that you're just teaching their automation driving what you see. You're not teaching their driving, they're teaching what you would do. That's the point behind CAPTCHA. So there's lots of bots and atomizers. There are many different generations now of bots, super automated. If you have this in your environment, you have to use AI to be able to defeat it. It's AI versus AI. So AI has many, many different levels. I'm not going to go into it here, but you need to learn this. 2 reasons why. The future security requires you to secure this. And I'm telling you that not only do you need a lot of algorithms and deep learning in your environment, they are super susceptible to security problems. The ability to poison these things is simple because nobody's really thinking about the security problems on these today. The data lakes are easy to be poisoned on these. So they're not worry-free, but they're super needed. All right, so I made a case for bots. I made a case for the idea of microservice mesh environments. APIs, this is Gartner's whole thing. Gartner says the next generation of security is this. This is your problem. Everything. What does that mean? APIs are the gateways between these bots. They don't need user experience and customer experience websites with HTML and so forth to be able to talk. They talk through API gateways, right? If 50% of the traffic is bots, 50% of the traffic doesn't need all that markup language. And API gateways don't have that much security today, generally speaking. You heard a lot about 5G from Egons today. You know, there's this discussion that we wouldn't have Uber, we wouldn't have Twitter, we wouldn't have Facebook if 4G didn't come. That we couldn't see what and how the world would change with 4G, giving us that power at our handheld. 5G will do the same thing. There's no doubt about it. 5G will change us in ways that we can't even begin to understand. But we know this, that 5G and IoT are the same thing. You even heard it from LMT today. It's the different side of the same coin. It's the fuel to the way that these things are connected. And these things being connected is the biggest problem for security. I'm very low on time. But if you're not familiar with a country that actually had 2 cell phone providers that fought each other through a hacker named Best Buy, using IoT devices, and the Mirai botnet actually took down one of the major cellcom providers in Liberia for days and weeks, fighting each other via IoT devices. So we reviewed a lot. I don't know if there's a few more minutes left for conversations. I'll put a little plug, a selfish plug in for my darknet presentation tomorrow, where I'll be teaching you about how you can purchase all of these attacks that I mentioned on the darknet for very little money and really very little knowledge.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience? Okay, I don't see anybody. So we have several online, and the first which came in is there any danger for a physical world due to the next fight for the AI?
Yeah, I mean, this is where a lot of people are going, without a doubt, that the next resource is these algorithms and deep learning tool sets and how to actually get better at these, that this is the next idea of a jet engine or the next idea of a nuclear bomb kind of thing, right? That if you get very, very, very good at these and you have an algorithm or an algorithmic set of understanding how to do, especially on the deep learning side. If you're not familiar with the differences, I know AI and machine learning are used a lot. Deep learning is a very specific set of ways that you go about neural net learning, and it has many different ways of doing it. And I can promise you today, the massive research is how to get that deep learning faster, better, and higher quality with less security concerns associated with it.
Thank you. And we have another one. Security of cloud depends today quite often on two-factor authentication. And what do you think? How to secure these authentication factors if they are located in our mobile devices more and more? And is it actually a threat if they are inside there?
It's a great question, especially since I said promiscuous permissions is the #1 problem. If you're not familiar with the Capital One hack on the Amazon structure, really at a technical level, what you'll find is that an authentication doesn't happen just once. It happens many, many times in the cloud. And credentials are carried typically through bots between different servers that are actually handling your problems. So the answer is that multi-factor authentication has to happen not just at the point of entry, but nearly at the type or the intent of the transaction. Said simply, you were able to multi-factor authenticate into an S3 bucket for Capital One, but because of a problem internal to Amazon with a local approval server, you could actually escalate those privileges. So you can come from an outside and escalate into the S3 bucket. So the answer is that there's many ways into those buckets, and two-factor authentication isn't perfect.
Okay, and probably the last one, because we are running out of time. A quantum computer and security in future. What are your thoughts about this?
It changed. I mean, you know, this is one of those things where then the whole chain, it changes the whole game. Let's be honest with ourselves, right? So I know Google just came out with there's 3 companies that are doing a lot of research in this: Google, IBM, and Alibaba, and they seem to have different levels of processing capability. But let's be honest that the processing capability really comes together the way that the promise is. Then everything changes because the processing capability to be able to break encryption, to be able to break keys, and to be able to speed up the bots and the deep learning changes the game. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.